Mr. Peter Gordon.
Good morning, one and all. I have a much easier task than my predecessors here, since real estate law is kind of self-explanatory. I took a key from John Buckley, who referred to me, a young couple that recently bought a Craftsman house. And the Craftsman style of architecture is a love of mine. His clients have a termite problem, and once upon a time I won a case against Terminix, if you can believe this, for about $700,000 for overlooking serious termite conditions on hillside property. So I'm just going to just go through a little bit of my background. I've been admitted to the U.S. Supreme Court and sat next to Justice Kennedy, who's been the most important justice for the last 15 years in that induction ceremony. I'm a real estate broker, although I do not compete with the members of our group who are real estate brokers. And so I'm going to talk to you about California Craftsman bungalows, right? And I just wanted to give you like a quick view of, this is the most famous door to the greenhouse, which is owned by USC, and it's available in Pasadena for visits. But this is kind of this is like the palace of Craftsman architecture, and it's available for visits if you look it up, the greenhouse in Pasadena. But the Craftsman bungalows are an astonishing thing. I mean, at the turn of the century, you could order from Sears Roebuck a Craftsman house for $700, $800, $900. They deliver it here to Los Angeles, and then you would build it, or you would have a group of professionals build it. This is a modest Craftsman house. You'll see that typically with a large open porch, and then they also have sunrooms. These are the modest versions of it. Now they're probably worth $1 million or more, but once upon a time you could get one for $700, $800.
Can I get that on Amazon Prime?
Yeah, absolutely. So the movement is part of the arts and crafts world in terms of arts and design. And there's a number of special features that go with these things. So I'll show them to you. This is the wide roof beams. These are some of the typical features and elements. There's quite a variety of looks, but I mean, they all have a kind of a country, down-home, sweet sort of feeling to them. They usually have a sunroom, especially in California, where you can enjoy the opportunity of the in-and-out living style that became so popular here. Some of these are larger and more elaborate. I do not know those two ladies, it just happens to be in the photo. Here's some more images. Gardens are also a typical part of it. Some of these are quite elaborate. As an example here, that might be one of the greenhouse type structures in Pasadena. They have a lot of Japanese influence to them. Most of these houses have a hearth that is the center of life, and that's the way they were designed. And the family life is around the hearth in the living room. More so than it is these days around the kitchen, which is what a lot of designers focus on. The furnishings, this is Stickley there. That chair is a Stickley, that's the most famous furniture designer of that era. They're doing a lot of reproductions of this now, and there's a revival in the Craftsman style. That's a rather grand living room with a hearth centered to it. Now, this is a dining room looking through. They often have these pocket doors that slide back and forth and disappear between the two rooms, so the living room and the dining room float into one another. This is a more grand version of one. And then I have a couple of, you'll see the antique stove there in the background behind the island. And this one has an even grander old stove there behind the island. And these are a couple of the most famous books on the subject. And Green, that's the way they spell their names. And that image to the right, that's the millionaire's version of a Craftsman home. And you can see that, as I say, in Pasadena, there's still these grand ones. Now, one of the reasons I love this stuff is because I had a very unusual version of the Craftsman style. There's a style called Japo-Swiss, if you can believe that. The exterior looks Japanese. And that's a bird cage there. That structure that supports the roof is called a bird cage. And I happen to have, I no longer own it because after my third child was born, this house was too small for us. But this is a house on Cursan Avenue just north of Sunset. And this is probably maybe the best Japo-Swiss example I know of in Los Angeles. This is this half-moon porch, a beautiful porch. You see two of those bird's nest type supports for the roof structure. And the house is now owned by Amy Aquino and her husband. She's an actress. And they've done a beautiful job. I mean, whatever we did, they've carried it forward. This is the more modest version of that magnificent door that I showed you from the greenhouse. That's the entrance. This is now looking at it from the inside. And then this is the living room, and there's the hearth. And this is where you start seeing the kind of the Swiss elements. And this is a close-up on the above the fireplace, where you have a scene, an idyllic scene in the country with a pipe player and I guess sheep or something, maybe cows. This is a living room with a built-in behind it that is completely original, and then there's a little porch off to the left. This is the sunroom of this house. It's quite small, and that's another little baby's bedroom. That's where my third child was first housed, but it became too small, and that's when we moved. The bathroom area. This is the kitchen redone by Amy and her husband. And this is the rear of the property. You're looking at a large deck that's off the bedroom on the second floor. And this is the way the driveway looks with these Japanese elements sticking out of it and the roof structure. You'll see it. This is the garage. The garage is done the same way. It's done in the Japanese look, right? And has that swept roof with that end that sweeps up. And there's a lovely little garden. And then just to finish it off, there's now a revival of this style of architecture, and if anyone of you knows the Montage Hotel in Laguna Beach, this is a massive update on what craftsman elements are. They continued it here, and this is their hearth and living room. A slightly larger pool than you might expect. And then this is Torrey Pines in San Diego, which is even more traditional in its craftsman design. A lot of beams, wide roofs, and Japanese elements, massive structures. This is a huge version of that bird cage that was on the house I once upon owned. This is now the living room. You see the repetition of that magnificent entrance there that you have in the green design in Pasadena. This is their lobby area, typical room, and they went with the stickly style furniture. That's a little better view. That's classic stickly looking design there in terms of the bed frames. And then, and that's, and there you see, that's a huge version of this design. And then Sierra Bonita is a street just north of Sunset, between Fairfax and La Brea. And yeah, it's right next to Crescent. And you'll see this street, just below Hollywood Boulevard, is filled with these small original craftsmen. There's probably about 20 of them, one after the other. It's probably a historic preservation overlay. My former house, the Japanese Swiss, is on the California Register of Historic Places, and I've done a lot of searching for it. I think it may be the best example of the Japanese Swiss because there's almost no others. So that's a little passion and love of mine, so I wanted to share it with you since real estate law is sort of self-explanatory. Is there anything that anyone wants to ask in connection with this or real estate law? Well, I'm probably partial. If you ever see the Greenhouse, the Greenhouse is a palace of this design, and it's done at such a level of craftsmanship that you can't repeat. So consequently, the Japanese Swiss is my favorite. Anything else that I can answer?
Are you a Neutra fan?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Neutra up in the hills of Tarzana. Amazing property with views like almost 360. It was like on the market for $5 million. I think they brought it down to under 5, like 4.5. It's amazing piece of Neutra.
David isn't here today, but I mean, we have, I think in California, or maybe even in Los Angeles, we are recognized as having one of the greatest stocks of architectural, single-family home architecture. I mean, we have probably the greatest variety in the country of every type of design you can imagine. Like Neutra is sort of Bauhaus or early modern, and then you have everything else. You have Mediterranean, you have English, that Art Deco. It's a tremendous wealth of opportunities. Anyone else?
Yeah. So What's the thing that we should be listening for? What's a good tip for you? What are the kinds of things that people say that would clue us into, oh, this would be a great tip for Peter?
Well, given John's influence and Jennifer's company, I mean, if you have a problem with, non-disclosure as to termites or defective work in terms of termites, I've handled a number of those cases. I mean, I primarily like to do disputes. I'm what they call a litigation lawyer. So I tend to get involved if there's a real estate dispute, whether it's between partners or the management company has defrauded you or a partner has defrauded you. It's really having to do with issues of some kind of conflict or dispute over a property interest. That's usually my primary.